Well, good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. I'm sure there's some people that will be joining us as we move along, but for those of you that are on time, I don't want to waste your time. First of all, let me just point out I'm Larry Clark, the president of AAHGS Richmond, and today we're going to have a presentation by our vice president, uh, Michelle Oliver. Before we get started, I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about AUGS for those of you that are visiting and welcome all visitors and members that are here today. So I just wanted to point out that our Richmond chapter is one of 37 chapters of AUGS, which is based in Washington, D.C. And AUGS is a nonprofit organization committed to pursuing scholarly and educational work on the genealogy and history of African Americans. AUG stresses the importance of our history and genealogy by encouraging other participants to record, research, and document your personal family stories. The Greater Richmond AUG chapter was founded in 2010. In October of that year, we was officially chartered by the national organization. And recently in December of 2021, we were able to celebrate our 10-year anniversary, which we were successful in holding both virtually and in person. The recording of our anniversary is available on YouTube if you want to go out and search for Richmond AUGS. Currently, we have about 80 members who are individual or family members. And since COVID has set in, we've continued to have our meetings all virtually. As a result of that, actually, we've reached out and we're able to get quite a few people from other locations across the nation to join us. Most of them who had family ties in the Virginia area. One thing, if you're interested in becoming a member of our chapter, our, currently our meetings run from January to December, and it's usually on the last Saturday of the month, except in November. We have a fee of $50 as a member. $15 of that goes to the local chapter, and 35 goes to the national chapter. Since we're holding everything virtually, our sessions are open to the public, so anyone is encouraged to attend. If you want to know more about our sessions, you can go to our website, www.augsrichmondva.com, or you can email us at augsrichmond@gmail.com. Before we get started with our presentation, I wanted to take a moment to show our calendar. Give me 1 second. Hopefully you can see that. If you go out on our calendar on our website, you'll see a listing of the AUGS national calendar. And there's a lot of activities that are coming up. I just wanted to make sure that people are aware that things like Roots Tech is going to be starting the 3rd of March. There's other activities listed that you might be interested in. And one thing I wanted to point out also is that our national conference starts in October 13th, and that's also virtual. One of the benefits of being a member is that you do get a discount on the national conference. So if you get a chance, go out to our website and check out these upcoming events. There's some great things coming up this weekend. And even this afternoon, Dr. Shelley Murphy, who's one of our members, will be doing a presentation at 1 o'clock on the new International African American Museum. So there's a lot of interesting things that people can plug into if you could get a chance to go out there and look at the site. It also allows you to link to those activities that are coming up, like the Roots Tech Conference, which you will need to register for. So our speaker today, I mentioned, is Michelle Oliver. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning.
So she's going to talk about reclaiming Black ancestral ties in Virginia plantations. And Michelle is also the president of the ASALA, the Richmond, Virginia chapter branch of ASALA, in addition to being the vice president of our AAHGS chapter. She wears many hats. She's going to deliver a presentation about her journeys through her family ties and history and her discovery of her ancestral relations in the Amhill Plantation in Cumberland, Cartersville, Virginia. So, Michelle, if you're ready, I will turn things over to you. And you should be able to share if you need to.
Let's see. Good morning, everyone. It says I can't share as of yet.
Sorry, you should be now.
Let's see. All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here this morning, and thank you for allowing me to do this Black History Month presentation. I am excited about this, so I want to get started. So bear with me while I try to figure out which screen is which. All right. And all right. Is everybody able to see the screen?
Yes.
A full screen, great. So I am going to turn off my video so that you all can see everything. Perfect. And I'm going to start off with I've done this presentation once before. So, and I've added to this presentation. So thank you all for being here, but I'll start and then I'll get back in. So here we go. Okay, wait a second here. Wade in the water, we did wade in the water. Children wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. We are the sons and the daughters. We gotta stand up and make it loud. Just like I thought on the Pharaoh and let my people go. We are a new generation. From the ones who have come before, He's calling us into freedom. Let my people go. Wade in the water, we did wade in the water, children wade in the water. God said He's gonna jump in the water. Hello, my name is Michelle Evans Oliver, and I will be presenting to you Reclaiming Black Ancestral Ties at Virginia Plantations. I am a descendant of slaves, and I, as well as my ancestors, want to tell our journey. So our agenda today is I'll talk about what is Virginia Black Public History Summer Institute and what I have learned and researched thus far.
Who are the White Randolphs? Connections to the Ancestral Plantation, the 1700 Virginia scandal of the Randolphs. Who are the Black Randolphs? Family pilgrimage to Ampthill, and what's next for the Black Randolphs? So who am I? I'm a mother. I have two children, Evan and Lauren. And my son is a senior in high school, and my daughter is a senior in college, about to come home to get her master's in mathematics, and she wants to be a teacher. She also plays lacrosse. By trade, I'm a financial advisor. I am not a historian. I don't have a PhD. I'm a historian enthusiast. I'm also a business analyst. I've been in the financial advisor field for over 20 years, and I work as a business analyst for the state government. And of course, I am, as Larry said, the president of ASALH, Richmond, Virginia. That's the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. And I'm the vice president under the tutelage of Larry for AAHGS here in Richmond. I don't do too much, but you know, it's fun. So, what is the Virginia Black Public History Summer Institute? Well, the Virginia Public History Black Institute was directed by internationally acclaimed preservationist, architect, and Saving Slave Houses founder Joby Hill in 2021, which was the inaugural Virginia Black Public History Institute. It's the first of its kind summer workshop series, and it was a multi-generational group of slavery descendants from 5 Virginia historical plantations, along with student research assistants from Norfolk State, UVA, and Virginia State, go Trojans. We joined the leading innovators in Black public history for 12 weeks of collaborative place and project-based learning and co-research. The workshop ultimately sought to promote equitable preservation and co-stewardship of Black ancestral sites statewide. So much information that we've learned, and I am grateful for the opportunity. So there were 5 Virginia plantations that we all studied. Ampthill, of course, is the one that my ancestor came from. Berkeley Plantation in Charles City County, Farcelia Plantation in Nelson County, Green Hill in Campbell County, and McChesney in Augusta County. We met about twice a week, and we had the opportunity to visit our ancestors' plantation. Okay, so my mother was a teacher all of her life, so she taught me to show visually as well. So I'm going to show you it's a trailer that just came out, and you all are the first to see it. So I am going to show you that. So let me unshare and reshare my screen. This trailer will tell you exactly, well, it will give you a summation of what we participated in. I think you should enjoy it because I did.
So far, it's been really cool to visit the plantations and see just how history has worked its way through Virginia.
I'm Joby Hill. We are here for the 2021 Virginia Black Public History Institute, also known as the Descendant Workshop.
So I thoroughly am enjoying the workshop because of all of the great research and history that I did not know. And I'm able to utilize that in my research for my relatives.
Doing this workshop, it feels like I'm getting pieces back of me.
Doing these site visits, and for many of the descendants, visiting these sites will be the first time they've had the opportunity to visit these sites. I hope it's an opportunity for them just be able to experience these places firsthand and really be able to make a connection. It's already incredibly personal because it is their family that they are researching and learning about.
One word to describe my experience with the Descendant Workshop is proud.
Empowered.
Grateful.
Grounding.
Humility.
So one of the best parts about participating in the Descendants Workshop has been being able to share in this experience with other descendants.
It's great to finally be able to step foot and, kind of try to retrace your ancestor steps while they were here.
It's a lot of mixed emotions.
This is part of my heritage too, so I appreciate her having this space here because it helps preserve my heritage as well.
I really feel that it's important, for more Black Americans to reclaim these sites. There's obviously been a lot of trauma and a lot of pain that's occurred here. At the same time, the fact that we still exist and we've survived shows the resilience of our ancestors.
All right. So were you able to hear and see that? I hope so. That was what we embarked on. So now I can tell you my story, our story right now. So let me pull my screen up again. Bear with me while I find my presentation. Here we go. You probably can't hear that, but there's something in the background, so hold on for a second. I can't even find it. Bear with me for 1 second. Where's the trailer? Oh, here it is. Perfect. All right. Let's try this again. I'm trying to be fancy, and fancy doesn't work when you use another computer. So all right. There we go. Now share. Can you see that now?
We see that.
All right, perfect. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Next. So you saw the trailer, you saw what we kind of embarked on. And now my next topic is, who are the White Randolphs? So the White Randolphs are one of the first families of Virginia. What is the first family? The first families of Virginia were those families in colonial Virginia who were socially prominent and wealthy, but not necessarily the earliest settlers. They descended from the English colonists who primarily settled in Jamestown, Williamsburg, the Northern Neck, and along the James River and other navigable waters in Virginia during the 17th century. These elite families generally married within their social class for generations. No family in colonial Virginia was most prominent or most powerful than the Randolphs. You must be prepared to hear the name, the Randolphs, when you come to Virginia, said a French traveler I think his name was Marquis de, let me try to get this right, Chastellux, who recognized that the Randolphs were one of the most numerous and wealthiest first families in the colony. One of the most important families in America at the time of its founding were the Randolphs of Virginia. And it was like the Adams were to Massachusetts or the Roosevelts were to New York. They were all rich, they were all socially prominent and politically fearsome. The Randolphs amassed great wealth from tobacco, owned hundreds of slaves, built imposing mansions, and produced generations of statesmen, generals, and jurists. They could not have done this, any of it, without the enslaved major help. I always imagine where I would be if someone took care of my household needs, my household chores, someone cooked for me, cleaned for me, went to work for me, washed my clothes, drove me to my friend's house. You know, the accomplishments for all of my family would be grand, but I digress. I'm sorry. Thomas Jefferson, John Marshall, Robert E. Lee, all their mothers were Randolphs. So as my expert genealogist friends say, Viola, Besaida, Shelley, Renata, you have to find out who enslaved your family in order to find the trail of them, something like that. So one of the first who came over from England of the Randolphs was William Randolph. His father was named Richard Randolph from England. His uncle had come over earlier in 1642 and encouraged him to come over after both of his parents died. History says he moved to Virginia sometime between 1669 and 1773, and he married Mary Isham. His descendants included many prominent individuals, like I said before, Thomas Jefferson, John Marshall, Pascal Beverly Randolph, Robert E. Lee, Peyton Randolph, Edmund Randolph, John Randolph of Roanoke, and the list goes on. And I want you to notice in this presentation the names as I go through this presentation because they all overlap and it sometimes made my research pretty difficult at times. So we're going to be focusing on the Randolphs of Ampthill Plantation. So this is a map of Cumberland County, Virginia in 1864. It's pretty, you can't really see it, but this kind of shows like the scale of Cumberland, and it's very small, but actually it looks big here. You see the Appomattox River here, James is here. I have a picture, I have a picture of this blown up I want to show you, but just to give you a little information, Ampthill is in Cartersville, Cumberland, Virginia. Cartersville is an unincorporated community in Cumberland County. So this is a closer look at the map. And if you can see, right where the James started is Ampthill Plantation. This is in 1864, so probably William Edward Harrison owned it at that point. And you can see where they've broken off some areas. Mrs. Harrison owns this part. Dr. Harrison up here owns that part. You'll hear me talk about the Carringtons later. Over here, here's Cartersville. Over here, there are some Andersons, and I know some individuals in our AAHGS chapter have Andersons in their family. So it's a great map to look at. So Ampthill is here, Clifton and Glenlevar. The land Ampthill is on the original part of a wider tract that was just under 3,000 acres. Imagine that, 3,000 acres. It was on the James and the Willis Rivers. It was originally granted to Charles Fleming in 1714, later purchased by Thomas Randolph in 1722, then purchased by Robert King Carter in 1724, who would pass it down through his family. Side note, King Carter, as his nickname attests, was the richest and one of the most powerful Virginians of his day. Virginia born, he inherited land from his father and his elder half-brother and spent much of the rest of his life accumulating more land. Carter died in 1732, leaving a 40-paged will. The tract in its entirety ended up supporting 4 plantations: Anthill, Clifton, Glenlavar, and Boston Hill. Boston Hill, however, was established in 1719 and was the home of the Carrington family. And through that, the Cables or the Cabells. Clifton was the original plantation. From the fork, from that it split the fork, and in 1760, and Glenlavar was in 1790. Randolph Harrison reacquired the fork, which eventually turned into Ampthill, after it briefly changed hands in the early 19th century, and asked one of his cousins, Thomas Jefferson, to draw up plans for an addition. We'll talk about that a bit later. So this is a small tree of how the Ampthill kind of went through the purchase. This is Robert King Carter. Robert King Carter's daughter was Sarah Ann Carter. She married Benjamin Harrison IV. They had Carter Henry Harrison. They had Randolph Harrison. There was another Carter Henry Harrison, a Randolph Harrison, and a Colonel Randolph Harrison, and it goes on and on. Now, the one thing about the Randolphs is they married each other. They just felt like marrying each other. They had the same social class, and they were cousins who married cousins who married cousins. So it was very interesting, to say the least. So Clifton is the birthplace of Carter Henry Harrison I, passed through to Randolph Harrison, the Randolph Harrison of 1769 to 1839. Glenlavar, occasionally referred to as Glenlivar or Glenlavor, was owned by Randolph Harrison and willed to his son, Carter Henry Harrison. Glenlavar finished construction in 1793, although it was demolished and rebuilt in 1850. This site is the major scandal amongst the Randolph family in 1793, involving John Marshall, Patrick Henry, and Patsy Jefferson. So the scandal, and I have to get this right because there's so much going on, but I'm gonna give you a Cliff Note version. So the scandal, there were 2 books that were actually written, probably 3 now, but actually written. One by Cynthia Kierner called Scandal at Bazaar, and the other is by Alan Pell Crawford called Unwise Passions. And so this is a true story. And here we go. Anne Carey Randolph. Yes, the Careys of, if you're from Richmond or know anything about Richmond, the Careys of Carytown, you see that, or Carey Street, same Careys. Also known as Nancy, who was 19, moved to the Bazaar Plantation in Farmville to live with her older sister, Judith, and her husband, Richard Randolph. So Richard, by the way, is first cousins to Judith and Nancy. Nancy was young, pretty, and single, and Richard was good looking, but they said Judith was plain. So Richard went to Princeton, and before he coming home to marry, he came back home and he married Judith. By the 1790s, when Nancy moved in with her sister, because their mother had passed away. The tobacco economy was collapsing, and the way of life in the great slaveholding Virginia had begun to disintegrate. So on October the 1st, 1792, Richard Randolph and his wife and Nancy, her sister, they all were cousins, went to a house party at Randolph Harrison's house and Randolph's wife, Mary, at Glenlevar, this house. The next day, the word had gotten out by the slaves of the Harrison house and began to circulate because Nancy had somehow had a baby at night and gave birth to a baby that no one could ever find. And so one of the slaves, I believe his name was Esau, told Richard Randolph what had happened. And they went out looking for the baby, couldn't find it. But one of the reasons why both Nancy and Richard were indicted was because the word got out in the enslaved community. And so when the word got out in the enslaved community, everyone started to talk. And so Richard Randolph was indicted and imprisoned, and his trial was the largest trial of the 17th century, and people from all over came to hear it. His lawyers were none other than John Marshall and old Patrick Henry. Richard was ultimately found innocent, even though they knew that he was guilty, because the enslaved could not testify in court. So the enslaved community had power, but could not exercise that power because of the laws of the land, which some of these first laws are still in existence today. So back to Ant Hill. This is the plans for Ant Hill by Thomas Jefferson. Very sketchy, right? And not much to it, which leads me to say that they are giving Thomas Jefferson a lot of credit and not any of the enslaved credit for actually building this property. So they put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in this because it took them a while to actually build the property itself. Thomas Jefferson wrote to his cousin Randolph regarding the plans. And the letter goes like this: September 28th, 1815. Dear sir, during a long visit to this place, I have had the leisure to think of your house. You seem to require 6 rooms, neither more nor less, and a good entrance or passage of communication. The enclosed drawing is the plan. The ground plat is in the detail and exact. The elevation is merely a sketch to give a general idea. The workman, the enslaved, if he has anything of an architectural mind, will be able to draw the particulars. Affectionately yours, Thomas Jefferson. So the plans were done in 1815, although the second part of the house wasn't built until 1835. Some sources allege that this is because Randolph Harrison was trying to use the new construction to attract a new wife after the death of his previous one, through that, and to show that he had the display of wealth through Jefferson's architecture. Once the addition was complete, the plantation was then renamed Ant Hill from the fort. After the plantation that was in Ant Hill, they named it after the plantation Ant Hill in Chesterfield County, Virginia, that the Careys owned. So there's, if you're from Richmond, you see Carey, you see all of the names that are Randolph's, all the names that are kind of commingling together. Ant Hill was sold upon Randolph Harrison's death and was purchased by William Harrison, reacquired by another Randolph Harrison, and passed down to Colonel Randolph Harrison, upon whose death it split amongst the family. Ant Hill fell into some state of disrepair, and it was purchased and partially restored and turned into a bed and breakfast in 1998 to 2007. although the most recent owners are the descendants of the Harrison family. So today it lists that it has 9 secondary buildings remaining on the site, including a garage, a kitchen, a smokehouse, an ice house, a well house, a chicken house, and a tenant house, which is the enslaved house. It's listed only at 60 acres from the 2,800 acres. And this house is what it looks like as it stands today. This house is on the National Historic Registry list. All right. So we had to figure out who they were in order for the reason. So the reason why we're here today, and the reason why we're here today is to talk about the Black Randolphs, because that's who I am. So it starts with my mother. Pictured here is a 1950s picture when she was in college at Virginia Union University. This is also where she met my father, Horace Langston Evans Sr., and her grandmother was a Randolph. So these are my maternal grandparents. St. Clair Gilliam, 1908 to 1991, born in Cumberland County, and Earlene Woodson Gilliam, 1911 to 1976, born in Buckingham County. My maternal grandmother's mother was a Randolph. So these are my maternal great-grandparents: Nathaniel H. Woodson, 1876 to 1944, born in Buckingham County, and Mariah Randolph Woodson, also known as Rye, born in 1882 to 1962, born in Cumberland County. Her father was a Randolph. And my maternal great-great-grandparents, Reverend Jacob Randolph Sr., also known as Reverend Jake, 1855 to 1941, but some people say 37, yep. Born in Cumberland County, Virginia. And Effie Thomas Randolph, 1857 to 1917, born in Cumberland County. This is the reason why I started this research project. And he is the reason why we're here today, because of Reverend Jacob Randolph Sr. He was the first, what they call T.D. Jakes of the South. And he was born to Jack and Caroline Randolph in Cumberland County in 1855. He was the 7th son in the family of 12. His mother died when he was about 3 years old. When he was 12, he joined Tarwallet Baptist Church, and he was called into the ministry. In a few years, he was licensed by Cornerstone Baptist Church. But because he didn't have a formal education, he was limited in his preaching. So he said, I'm going to college. So he went to the Virginia Theological Seminary and College in Lynchburg, Virginia. He was ordained and returned to Cumberland County, and he worked at Cornerstone, Ridgeway Baptist, and in Buckingham, and Zion Hill in Prince Edward County. He pastored Zion Hill and Ridgeway for more than 35 years. He called Cornerstone his mother church, as he was at the helm for over 49 years. In 1915, he was called to Race Street in Farmville, Virginia. During his tenure of all of the churches, he has said that he saved 5,000 souls and preached at 4,000 funerals and married 2,500 couples. His wife, Effie, died in 1917, and he married again in 1920 to an Anne Randolph. And he moved to Race Street, and he built a home on Race Street. He preached at all 4 churches until his death in 1937. This autobiography came from an unknown person who wrote it, and it was actually in the newspaper, in one of the Farmville newspapers. So our pilgrimage started here at Ancestral Plantation. It was summer, it was hot, and we were to meet at 9 o'clock. And I was the first person to get there, to arrive there from our group, because it was a group of maybe 20 of us. And so next will be a clip from my cousin Danny and I meeting for the first time. We had only seen each other on Zooms previously. And so it's going to show the meeting. It's a short clip. Oh, you know what? Before I do that, let me see whether I can give you a little bit of context to show you the actual pilgrimage summary video that just came in. Now bear with me, because I'm going to try to do this and not mess up and not take a lot of time. And I don't have it, so we're not going to do it, thank goodness. All right. Let's see here. All right, so I'm going to just go straight forward to it says see visual, but I'm going to go straight forward to our meeting.
Hello, how are you?
Good, and you?
Nice to meet you.
You too. Finally.
Finally, I know.
This is cool.
This is cool. How was your drive?
It was good.
Good.
Other than the snake.
I was driving here and I was like, I don't think I've ever met anybody on the Randolph side before.
Really?
Never.
All right, so I guess you're wondering who filmed this. So we actually, as you know, had a film crew there waiting for us and to document all of our meetings. So at the end of this, I'll pull it up and I'll show you the actual, not trailer, but it's a 4-minute video of what I'm going to be talking about here today. So here we are in the car with Danielle, we call her Danny, was her grandmother, who is also a Randolph. And soon after everyone showed up to the plantation, we began our introductions. So as you can see, I was tickled pink to hear from my new cousin's introductions. Pictured here is Justin Reed, and he's my cousin as well. And our other cousin, and I had just met him for the first time. We had talked on the phone for a couple of years, and this was our first time meeting. So the first place I wanted to see, because we could map out our own trip, our cousins could map out what we wanted to do since it was our plantation. I wanted to see the slave quarters where my ancestors stayed. And pictured here is a slave home on the property. The Randolphs were wealthy, of course, so they could afford to have many slaves and build many homes with brick. This is a slave home with the center fireplace. They were right in the middle. It's a center fireplace and an opening to both sides. So you can have 2 families, or 3 families, or 4, or however. And the fireplaces would keep them warm at night when it was cold. A weaver's cottage. Yeah, so initially this house had been written and interpreted as a weaver's cottage. But upon the inspection from Joby Hill from Saving Slave Houses, she was able to quickly identify that this was actually a slave house kitchen. As you can see, they put the little weaver thing there because they said it was a weaver's cottage. And this is a view of the slave kitchen house looking out right here. And as you can see, the first house right here, this was the first house that was built before the brick home was there, before Ancestral was built. The second picture is of the narrow staircase. Oh my goodness, it was so narrow that went upstairs to where we believe the slaves' quarter for sleeping. And here's a narrow staircase, and they've actually put some panel walls, and this is all what the owners have put in there, but the staircase is there. Okay, of course, the film crew was there filming Joby, and you can see from the guy here, Justin has a, I guess you could call it a, he's recording us, because as you'll hear at the end of the presentation what we're going to do with that recording. But pictured here is Joby Hill, and she's from the renowned Saving Slave Houses. And Justin Reed, of course, my cousin, and the others in the picture were other descendants from other plantations who came along to share in the pilgrimage. But what I found out is that once we started to share our DNA and our GEDMESH numbers, quite a few of us are related to each other. And there is a story between Berkeley Plantation, of course, and Amptill Plantation. And so, it's a remarkable how, they say it's 6 degrees of separation, but it's actually less than that. So Joby is showing us how the enslaved would cook, and in the fireplace. Also, there's char, as you can see, and soot that's been there for hundreds of years, still in the fireplace. They're some of the, I think this one and this, they're original to the actual fireplace itself. And so we were just, kind of in awe and kind of taking it in, looking at the fireplace at that point. And this is where our ancestors would cook. Now, the room is not big at all. And because the room is not big, we could imagine only in the summertime how hot it would be and how that fireplace was a source of heat in the winter. And so this is inside of the fireplace showing centuries of cooking and heating. And as you can see, the soot is still there. And this is inside of the slave quarters kitchen, where I guess there are more ovens on the side. And these are just pictures of that as well. So because I knew that this might have been an emotional day, I wanted to start our day by paying homage to our ancestors on the plantation. So I put together an ancestral altar that stayed up the whole day we were there. And I actually put it up inside the slave kitchen, the enslaved kitchen and kitchen quarters. The next slide, you will hear a part of my ancestral prayer. And if you listen closely, you'll be able to hear our ancestors speaking to us through nature. We offer light and pour libation with respect and honor for all our ancestors whose names we keep in our hearts and all the ones we don't know, to uplift and liberate their souls in the name and the light of the Almighty God. For it is through love and the will and the power of God that all souls are saved. We offer prayer and protection by way of the divine creator, and for those ancestral souls that are in darkness, forgotten, or lost. Let the light we offer fade out the shadows of fear and guide them towards the arms of God. We offer guidance to our ancestors by way of the guardian angels and protector spirits, who by the power and the order of God will assist them in their greater act of evolution. Let the light we offer be a beacon of hope and serve as an escape and protective shield from the shadows of despair. We offer love, compassion, and comfort to those ancestral souls that are suffering and depressed. Let the light we offer lead them from discord and miseries of their souls to the sanctuary of God and the joys of heavenly bliss. We offer healing by way of the Supreme Being on all spiritual levels for those ancestors who were abused, afflicted, deceived, enslaved, hated, lonely and misguided, neglected, oppressed, pained, saddened, traumatized, or died tragically. Let the light we offer to their souls inspire clemency, liberation, faith, love, and harmony from today onward. We forgive those ancestors who committed wrongs that have set their generational lines, we who are living in barrenness. And we forgive those ancestors who need it most, so that their souls will embrace in positive gratification right. Did you hear the birds and the insects? Because that was just, it was very quiet there. And then once I started to do the ancestral prayer, you can hear the birds chirping. That wasn't in the music at all. That was actual nature itself. So yeah, that was very touching. So here's a closer look at the ancestral altar. And as you can see, I was able to find some pictures. So this is my great-great-grandfather, Reverend Jake, and his wife, Effie Thomas. That's Jake Jr. right here. And this is actually Pleasant Woodson. And that's a whole nother story because the Randolphs and the Woodsons, the Black Randolphs and the Woodsons would marry each other as well. And this is Justin's grandmother, who's a Randolph. And of course, the pictures that we saw earlier today. Now, I went back to my roots of being in Africa, and we have our African candles, we have our African bell to ring off evil. We gave sage and rosemary and basil. There's an incense there. So this is just an ancestral altar that I put together for my ancestors. So after that, everyone dried their tears because I didn't even know people were crying. And we started to move around the plantation. We were able to after that, we first saw the ice house. And so one thing that we found is it was a huge ice house and it's actually still intact. The picture on the far left is looking out from the ice house, right here. Notice how close the kitchen and slave quarter is to the ice house. Everything was in close proximity to each other. So the history note, this building would have been lined with hay, then filled with blocks of ice cut from streams and rivers. Typically, ice houses had a ground level, an A-frame roof with steps leading down into the pit where the ice was stored. So just imagine going to the James River, picking up the ice and dumping it in here. And so that's how they kept the ice. And then they would add hay over top of it so it would stay like that throughout the summer as well. And then we were able to go to the smokehouse. Next to the kitchen quarters is another slave house in front of that. And the ice house was a little bit behind over on this side, the smokehouse. The wood is the original wood in the smokehouse. As you can see, there is soot and burn and ash still inside. It also still smelled like smoke. As a history note, the smokehouse was used for curing meats, most commonly chicken and pork. To cure pork, hogs would be butchered when ponds or creeks first started to freeze over in late autumn. So this is the big house. That's me on the front steps of the big house. And we weren't able to go inside of the house because it's still privately owned by one of the Harrison's families, a descendant. They were kind enough to let us be on their property. Just being there, though, was a very nice day, as you can see, and it was a surreal experience. This is a view from the big house, looking at the enslaved homes and the ice house you can see back here, and the smokehouse. And there was land all back here and land in the front too. But I just looked at it, as you can see, how close the house is to the big house. I mean, to the rest of the enslaved homes. It's all in so that everyone could see what was going on their property and what was going on with their enslaved. And so these are the bricks. And so the bricks kind of drew me to them. Here's a picture of it. And so most people take bricks for granted, but it seems as if they were like talking to me, if I can say that. So you can see how they are all handmade. This is a piece of one of the walls the bricks were. History note, the first step in making bricks was to find a suitable supply of the main ingredient, clay. Now, if you all have been to Buckingham or Cumberland, clay is everywhere. I used to dig in the clay when I was a kid. So the slaves excavated the clay by digging the clay and putting it in a clay pit. The enslaved took the moist mineral clay and packed it into a mold, usually made of wood and sometimes lined with copper. The size of these molds could vary based on the type of clay the enslaved were using. Bricks that were constructed of a stronger clay material would often shrink during the firing process. So the enslaved would cast the bricks in a mold slightly larger than the desired size of the brick in order to accommodate for shrinking. The enslaved then left the resulting brick molds on the ground to air dry. After the brick molds were dry, the enslaved would remove the bricks from their mold and place them into the fire pit, which would often heat up to about 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And since many bricks could be placed in the fire pit at once, this process, known as firing, produced bricks of varying quality and composition. The result was that the bricks nearest to the fire became very hard, sometimes brittle, while those that were furthest from the fire often maintained a soft core. After firing at this temperature for a few days, the enslaved would gradually decrease the temperature of the fire pit by opening air holes, which allowed the bricks to cool. This was a daunting process over a few weeks and months. So that means that the enslaved worked 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And they got the end of the year off, but that's a whole nother story. You can see here, right here was where this brick was probably closer to the fire than others because it has a soot mark here. And I know in some recent news articles, they found a handprint in one of the bricks. Not at Ant Hill, but at bricks in another plantation. So this is the basement of the main house. And this was, it was open to us that day. So we were able to open the cellar and go inside. And so this, like I said before, there was another house. There was a white house that was the Fork. And that had a basement as well, but that was locked. So we were able to go into the Ant Hill basement. And what we found inside was very amazing and humbling. And this is a picture looking out of the basement. Yeah, so here we go. So we went down in the basement. There were three fireplaces. Underneath it, unbeknownst to the actual owner, they thought it was just a storage facility. It's an actual slave quarter. This spanned the length of the house, of the Ant Hill house, all made of solid brick because that's the foundation. And I couldn't not even imagine how long it took to put all of this together. I'm sure it was backbreaking. The owner had put in an HVAC system, there were pipes down there and things like that. But everything, the basement was intact. And so it was two fireplaces below. As you can see here, here's one of the fireplaces. There's my cousin Justin looking at that fireplace. Yeah. So I found out, I'm related to her, and she's from another plantation, and I'm related to her as well so two different plantations. So you can kind of see how Virginia utilized their, it's hard for me to say, but all of the Virginians from these big plantations knew each other, and they were utilizing us, the enslaved, to get their work together. So this is us looking at the fireplace and walking around the basement. And we were just kind of in awe. So by, I already told you that one of the basements were locked, but this is us as we were exiting the basement and it showed like we were just kind of standing, and it was very quiet at that point. We were taking pictures then. I am on the porch of the Ancestral plantation, looking down, imagining what my ancestors endured and how many stood on the porch to serve someone. So during this pilgrimage, we were interviewed about our feelings and thoughts. And the bottom picture is of me being interviewed. The top picture is of the amazing view, the back of the home that is now attached to Ancestral, with a courtyard in the middle of the actual Ancestral plantation home and the Fork home. Beautiful, very beautiful. So I love this picture as it depicts 3 generations of Randolphs, all descending from Reverend Jake, the top one, and the side one. And the other 2 pictures are of my cousin Joanne and Justin, and how we felt that day. All types of emotions came from this day. We felt happy, we felt joy, we felt sadness, it was humbling, we felt grateful, thankful, strong. Those are some of the words I can use. So at the end of the presentation, I mentioned earlier there was a tract of about 3,000 acres touching the James and the Willis River. So this is where we were able to go, and this is where the land met the James River on the tract back in the 1700s. We went to this spot and we took pictures. So we then went to Old Cartersville Bridge. And Cartersville Bridge is a historic bridge located in Cumberland County. We poured libations for the indigenous people in that area as well, which were the Monacan Indians that lived in the area, as well as the Africans and African Americans that went up and down the river and lived in this area. There's stories and multiple stories that I've read about the African Americans and the Africans going up and down the river because they would go up the James to get to Richmond, Virginia. This is the bridge in the 1800s, and this was in July 2020. That's what we took, 2021. The original bridge was constructed in 1822, and it had 5 stone piers of rough cut ashlar and rubble, and 2 stone abutments remain. As you can see, this is one of them right here. The other one is closer to the land. And this is for all the engineering people who can understand this. But unfortunately, the 2 span adjacent to the shoreline remain intact, and today they are owned and preserved by the Cartersville Bridge Association of Goochland County. The bridge was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1972. So what I've learned since I've begun this journey of looking for my ancestors? I hope you enjoyed the presentation, but this is some of the things that I've learned. So I first started my research. I knew basics about Reverend Jake Randolph. I knew he traveled up and down the Virginia preaching the word, but I found that he preached way more than Virginia. He preached up and down the East Coast. I found this out when I looked into newspapers.com, and I found hundreds of articles with him mentioning that he was preaching funerals in DC and in New Jersey. And these are just some of the articles that I pulled out mentioning his name. And he actually, can you believe this, made the Richmond Times-Dispatch. Whew, that's funny. Negro minister 78 dies in Farmville. It gives his information here. I've found somewhere my great-grandmother's name was in it, Mariah, but I was just, I pulled some of the information out. The Richmond Planet, he was very, very active in. Port Chester is, I believe, up in Connecticut, but he was visiting, so it says a Virginia clergyman here. So I found these articles to be very, very interesting. So earlier we talked about the white Randolphs and with the names. So these are some of the names that I pulled out. And what I found is that the enslaved would, of course, we kind of know this, would use their masters and mistresses' names for their children's names. So we have Randolph Harrison, Carter Henry, all of these names here mimicked all of my relatives' names. I have potentially found the line of Randolphs where we were enslaved, and that's more to come. But also in doing a deep dive of the names, it is very difficult to manage who is who until you study birth and death years. There are repeated similarities. One thing I found is that the white Randolphs would use middle names, whereas even though we would, if we had a middle name, we wouldn't use it like they would use it. So like Ann Carey, they wanted to, but her name was Ann Carey Randolph, and they would always use her name Ann Carey. Same with Randolph Harrison, because they wanted to show their prominence in the community. And so I hope she's here today because I invited her. I have, through this trek, I was able to find, by happenstance, a cousin. And so these are more Black Randolphs. And I found 5 of the 12 brothers and sisters written in history. One I found lives near, in the same area, like Hamilton. They kind of stayed in the same area. Each of Reverend Jake's siblings had about 4 to 14 children. Reverend Jake's father, Jack, or Jackson, had at least 2 other siblings with 5 more children underneath them. And I found that they migrated up north. They did the migration up north, and a lot stayed in the neighboring areas like Hamilton, Buckingham County, Farmville, Prince Edward. I am extensively studying the white Randolph side in search of answers to some of my questions that I have. But I have found that there are Randolphs all over the state and bordering states, and even migration to California. If you don't know, Edmund Randolph from Richmond, Virginia, named Richmond, California in 1849. From the beginning, I was lucky to find my new cousin Zanetta right here through Ancestry. So her father is Jesse Steve. And they were able to share these pictures with me. So I love pictures.
Hey, Lauren, how you doing?
One of the things that
hold tight a minute.
That was one of the things that I was able to do, is I was able to get pictures, and I want to get more pictures of family members. This is, so we have Reverend Jake's brother, which was Carey Randolph. Carey had a Henry, then there was Henry Jr., then there was Jesse Carey, then there was Jesse Steve, and there's Zanetta and Zavian. And so this is Zanetta's son, this is Jesse Steve, and this is Henry Jr., I believe, if I'm right. I think I'm right. These are the 2 of the same people here. And this is a younger version of him. when he was boxing. I love this. So what's next for the Black Randolphs? So I told you that Justin had that headgear on because he was doing audio. So we're going to put together a 5-podcast series talking about our trek and our research. I can't wait to do that. And we want to do a history marker for Reverend Jacob Randolph Sr. Actually, where his church was on Race Street, and it was actually on Longwood's campus. And Longwood wanted to expand their campus. And so my great-great-grandfather, his house and his church had to move. So we want to put a marker on Longwood's campus, a historic marker for my great-great-grandfather. We want to have a marker unveiling with the Randolph descendants. And we want to have Black Randolph family reunions. And that's me looking for other ancestors and other relatives that are living now. And so if you know any Randolphs that either know their history or they're from Virginia or just any history of Randolphs, I've created a Black Randolphs of Virginia page, Black Randolphs of Virginia and beyond. And that's on Facebook. And so you can find it out there. So thank you for attending. My email is here, and we're at the Black Randolphs of Virginia, and I'm here for questions. And I'm going to try to pull this down and find the actual video of our trek, the other video. So, you're doing it. Thank you. All right. Let me try to look for the other video. But if you have any questions, please let me know. And I see where Shelley says there are some Randolphs. There are a lot of Randolphs in Lynchburg. Yes. So that's one thing that I heard that my grandfather, when he would travel, he might leave some children there. And so and he traveled to Lynchburg a lot. So that's one of the places that I'm familiar with is Lynchburg.
Michelle, this is very inspiring.
Thank you.
And I'm sure there's questions. If people want to put their questions in the chat, that would help. Just to kick things off, I had a quick question. You had mentioned at the beginning the trip that you took was a result of a study group.
Yes.
And could you name that group? And I assume they're still active.
Well, it was the first. It was the Virginia Black Public History Summer Institute, and it was on the Virginia Humanities site. And they're going to do it, I believe, every year. But that was the first one that was done. So I'm not sure when the next one is. But you can find it out if you want to call Virginia Humanities, if anyone's interested, or you can email me. I'll just shoot you over the person who is in charge of it, which was Justin, my cousin, and he'll be able to let you know, or even Joby Hill from Saving Slave Houses. She can assist as well.
Well, that was my next question, how to reach out to Joby Hill. So,
okay, email me. Yeah, yep. Okay. I have her email, and I think it's Joby at Saving Slave Houses. Just email me, and I'll be able to get that to you.
Great.
And let's see. Let me go to. So I saw earlier someone asked, and my newfound cousin Aileen, which was my friend who. So I have a few friends on the call too, and Aileen is one of them, Aileen and Christy. And we were talking last night, and we found out that we are cousins, and we're childhood friends. So that's interesting and amazing as well. I thoroughly enjoyed that. So thank you, Aileen, for answering the question. I see Viola Basker said that this, is it the Steigers? You see the Steigers name on there. That's true as well. And Robin
It's
Jones.
Steigers.
The Steigers, thank you.
It's spelled like that sometimes, but it's also Steigers.
Okay.
But seeing as Cumberland is so close to Buckingham, it fits. And I have seen not only in my research, but in my DNA connection to Steigers.
Oh, wow. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing. Robin Jones' hand is up.
Thank you so much for this presentation. It's really impressive to see the amount of work that you've done to dig up both the genealogy of the white people and the people of your family and community. So one thing that you emphasized was when you visited Ampel, you showed us some of the buildings, and you noted how close some of the buildings were to the big house. And you showed us that these were built of brick and they had beautiful roofs on them. My question is, they owned, enslaved, I should say, so many people. Isn't it likely that the rest, the regular people, the people that I would have been with would have been kind of out of sight, kind of away and out of sight, where the enslaved community would have lived? Did you have any sense of that, or any ideas about where those buildings might have originally been?
And I don't think I understand the context of your question. So you said, where would the other?
Yes, you showed us the kitchen, and you showed us maybe it was a kitchen, maybe it was a weaver's house, maybe it was the close by accommodations for some people who served in the house. But where did the regular people live? And did you get a sense from moving around the place where how far away and where the regular enslaved people would have lived?
Yes, I understand your question now. Well, those are all of the houses that are there as of today that are standing. So we weren't able to go out any further out. And we were also thinking that, there are probably some burial grounds out there. What we saw was a lot of cow pastures, because there were cows out there. And we didn't see the regular enslaved. And Ant Hill was a small plantation compared to, like, let's say Berkeley, which is huge in comparison to Ant Hill. And it's very remote. I don't understand why they love the countryside that much, but it's very remote. And so it could have possibly been other places that, other homes, but I didn't see them at all. And it doesn't mention them at all. I have found the trailer. I'm gonna see whether I can play this. If you all want to see it, let's see if I can do this right. And I'll play this. So this is just a summation of what I just did, what I just told you today. So here we go. Let's see, screen one, share sound. We're right here.
My name is Justin Reed, and I am Director of Community Initiatives at Virginia Humanities. I also manage the Virginia General Assembly African American Cultural Resources Task Force. And together with Saving Slave Houses in Joby Hill, we're hosting the first ever Virginia Black Public History Institute.
So I thoroughly am enjoying the workshop because of all of the great research and history that I did not know. And I'm able to utilize that in my research for my relatives, specifically the Randolphs, during this research project. My name is Michelle Evans Oliver, and we are at Amped Hill Plantation here in Cartersville, Virginia. My great-great-grandfather, Reverend Jacob Randolph Sr., was enslaved here.
It's been a epic experience. Just meeting one person was worth it, who comes from that line. And just to learn more about who I am and discovering, just what's in my backyard, literally, and how it relates to who I am.
Oh, how are you? Good, and you? Nice to meet you. So we met on Zoom initially. The first day of class, we didn't know we were cousins. And so we were introducing ourselves, and Justin said, Michelle, Danny's your cousin.
I was the creep, probably, because I was like, wow, this is my cousin. We're on Zoom. And I screenshot it. And I was like, oh my God, look, y'all. This is our cousin. Showing everybody else. Y'all, we have a cousin. And so I didn't tell her that. But I did screenshot her picture from Zoom. And that was creepy. But
I hope it looked good.
It was.
Okay,
I took like 3.
Oh, great.
I got the best.
Yeah, well, wonderful. For those ancestors who were abused, afflicted, deceived, enslaved, hated, lonely and misguided, neglected, oppressed, pained, saddened, traumatized, or died tragically. Let the light we offer to their souls inspire clemency, liberation, faith, love, and harmony from today onward.
I've been here several times, but this is the first time that I've ever come here with relatives of mine, which definitely changes the experience for me. I've never met Michelle until today. We met for the first time being here together at Amped Hill, and she led a really moving ceremony that honored our ancestors in the kitchen quarter where many of them likely would have lived. Getting to meet Joby and learning about her work with saving slave houses really introduced me to a completely different side of public history, focused on preservation and architecture, specifically focusing on slave houses.
I'm grateful for the experience and for just them giving us the tools to, find other members of our family. And it was something I didn't know I needed. So it's given me a new look on who I am and what I could be because of what I see that they were able to do. So, this is just priceless, and I do it over and over again.
And I really feel that it's important, for more Black Americans to reclaim these sites. There's obviously been a lot of trauma and a lot of pain that's occurred here. At the same time, the fact that we still exist and we've survived shows the resilience of our ancestors.
We are a part of the ancestral Randolph lineage. We come to you humbly to stand before you and pay homage and thank you. For if it were not for your sacrifices and lives on this earthly plane, we would not be standing here today. We thank you for your fortitude and your tenacity. We thank you for bringing us together. We thank you, and we are grateful. Danny, Justin, Joanne, and I, and our family, and wonderful spirits that we have gathered with us today on this journey through this former slave plantation. We know it is you who orchestrated this meeting today. We thank you.
All right, so I got it to work. So that was the each one of us each plantation has something similar to that, showing our journey through our plantation experience. And so I like to show the video because pictures kind of show you, but that kind of moves you into more of how we felt when we were there. I went through the Q&A right when you were watching the video, and someone asked me, do you know if you are related to the white Randolphs? So that was one of my questions, because I know that when you leave, when Civil War was over, and then my family dispersed in Cartersville, Hamilton, Buckingham, I wondered why my ancestors kept the Randolph name, because the Harrisons actually owned the plantation. And my Randolph side, and so the Woodson side as well, they're very proud people. And so I that was my journey to find out why they kept the Randolph name. And I found a line, and I don't know, I'm very is new to finding out information, but yes, I found a line, but I'm getting more. I have a cousin who is about 78 years old, a male cousin, and we're going to get him tested to make sure that I am right before I send out any or tell anyone about I am related to a white Randolph. So, and maybe not, but we'll see. Thank you. And let's see, there was another question here. In your research, did you learn any insight to discovering white family plantations that you can share? And that's from Linda. So Linda, if you can elaborate from that. So yeah, I've learned a lot. And I've discovered a lot about plantations that I did not know. I can share a story. One of the Carter Henry Harrisons, who actually was born at Clifton, which was right up the road from Amtill. He actually left Virginia with his wife. He had married his wife, and they went to Kentucky. And they packed up all of their belongings. They packed up all their furniture, their china, their horses, and it took them 6 weeks to travel to Kentucky, but they also packed 200 slaves with them as well. So I couldn't even imagine, I can't fathom I can't have the thought process of walking or horse. I can't do it, but it's written in history by a few accounts that I've read. So they went to Kentucky, and they actually have they call it an Amtill or Clifton. They have a Clifton in Texas. In Kentucky. So they mimicked Virginia, went to Kentucky and had the same thing. They have an Edge Hill there. They have a Clifton there. So they kind of mimicked to have it all the same. That's one of the stories that I can tell you that I've read, but I've stayed up plenty of nights doing this research, and I find it very intriguing about what we had to endure and the things that the white Randolphs were able to accomplish because we were at cooking, and we were cleaning, and we were doing many things that allowed them to be able to do the best and be the best. And then the other piece to it is that how they have kind of whitewashed us out of their history, because when you read their books are like, like they've done all of these great things, but they never really talk about how they were able to accomplish it. And the one thing that you hear as African Americans, when we talk about our accomplishments, we talk about the good times, and we also talk about the bad times, but they never talk about the bad times. Now, they might have talked about the bad times when it came to the tobacco industry, because that was, rampant throughout Virginia. But as far as the bad times as far as someone talking about how they were able to cook, like what is it? Thomas Jefferson's, I can't think of it, whether it was his mother, his aunt, because I'm swirling around with all of the Jeffersons now, the cookbook. Yeah, they couldn't cook. Why would they cook? Because they were prominent. So I'm going on for days now, and I'm going to answer some questions. I'm sorry. Let's see.
Anita Henderson has her hand.
Yes, Anita.
Yes, hello. I'm an Eggleston descendant, and I've been working with several white cousins on the family history. And one of the things I found out was that the Egglestons moved from Virginia to Mississippi during the late 1820s, early 1830s, because there was a depression in America. The tobacco crop failed, and 50,000 people left the state of Virginia, and they influenced the history and culture of all the other southern states. So you may want to check that out in terms of the timing of your own family migration, the Randolph white migration, because it may match time-wise with what happened with my ancestors.
Yes, they left. Well, it's noted in their history books that when the tobacco industry started to fold, a lot of them did leave, and they were. There's a book out by the. I want to call it Anne. It's so many Randolphs, but Anne Randolph, and their letters actually they were writing to each other. The women of the Randolphs were writing to each other, talking about, oh, how depressing it is that they have to go to work, and how their husbands were out doing, whatever, and how they felt okay, even though they were losing their tobacco and they had to go out to work, because they still had their enslaved individuals, and they were better than most people were. So yeah, I'll read more into that too, but it's like, I know I hear Viola Baskerville saying this all the time. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So it's incredible how much you can get, and then there's more information that you can read as well.
Well, you never truly finish in genealogy, so
you don't. And like, I want to finish it, but then I'm like, there's more stories, and I know that I have hundreds of other relatives from my grandfather, my great grandfather Jake, that I can research. But my goal is to find people who have researched their family, so that I don't have to do all the research. But I know in my line, I'm the only one who's doing it. So this is all new to everyone. Larry put in saving slave houses. Thank you, Larry.
Maybe we can get Jovi Hill to come and do a presentation.
Oh yeah, she's very busy, but I would love to have her here. I've seen her do a few presentations before, but she's very she's knowledgeable about. She's from the West, but she's very knowledgeable about saving slave houses and about documenting the actual history of the enslaved and the enslaved homes. I see one other, this is, the pastors had a lot of influence. I've learned a lot about my own family in newspapers because they were attending funerals and weddings. One church member gave her pastor an expensive coat in the 1920s. One pastor did commercials in newspapers about nasal congestion or something like that. That's interesting. Yes. There are, with Reverend Jacob Randolph, it showed that he would preach a funeral at one church, and then he would go to a wedding at another church, and then he would go to an evening service at another church, all in the same day. And I could not imagine, because at that point he had all of these kids, and my great grandmother was there. But that's just the way of life at that point. And he was well known for what he did. And there are plenty of stories about him. I just need to find out more. Unfortunately, my mother and father passed away, and all of her siblings have passed away as well. So I'm getting second account information, but I'm finding other lines that can kind of help me and guide me through this as well. And I don't, let's see, in your research, did you learn? I don't see any more questions.
Well, this has been a great presentation. And if anyone had any questions, please point out quickly. Robin, you had a question?
Yes. Michelle, or I don't know if Shelley's here today, but isn't it true that the Woodsons were all also, and you may have said this, but I think I remember hearing a lot about Woodsons connected with Monticello or with Jefferson. And so did you find that you were connected with those Woodsons as well?
So
and
I
there
have
were
not,
also Woodsons at Virginia State University. I don't know if they were connected too.
and there are Woodsons everywhere. So my grandmother, Mariah Randolph, married Nathaniel Woodson, and we're a part of the Carter G. Woodson lineage, but Carter G. didn't have any children. So we don't call ourselves descendants, we call ourselves relatives. Now, as far as the Woodsons that are at Monticello, I have not found a connection. I know I talked to Dr. Murphy about Shelley Murphy about that. And I don't see any, she gave me the Woodsons names and I don't see any connection, but who knows? I mean, it could be, but I haven't found a connection as of yet. But the Woodsons and the Randolphs are very closely connected. I know that the Black Woodsons and the Black Randolphs are very closely connected. And there's still Woodsons in Cumberland, Buckingham today when I go down there, because we still have land down there and I still have a lot of family that's in that area. Hope that answered your question.
Pat Jenkins has her hand up also.
Yes.
Hello. I was just wondering about one of your early slides that mentioned Pharsalia, and I was wondering about that. But I think maybe you just answered it with Carter Woodson. My family was enslaved by the Masseys and lived in Massey's Mill.
So I wasn't able to go on that pilgrimage to Pharsalia, but they're actually, I mean, they've done some extensive research. They were in my class, the descendants from Pharsalia. And if, I don't know whether you're looking for information or not, but you can email me and I can kind of give you I can give you the names of those individuals who did the research on that.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, Nikki Starr. Yes, yes, there it is. Her name is Nikki Starr. But I'm going to put my email address again in the chat so that you can email me if you would like, if you have any more questions. There we go.
And at 1 o'clock, Shelley Murphy is doing a presentation. Shelley, if you don't mind putting your link in the chat.
I'm sitting in with Tony Carrier. She's the director of the Center for Family History. I deal with the education, but yes, I'll be on there. And I'll put the link in the chat. You do need to register though. And we'll be talking about the International African American Museum and what's going on with the Center of Family History that will be there. Scheduled to open by the end of the fall this year. Thank you for mentioning that. Let me go get the link.
Thank you for your great genealogy knowledge.
I'm sharing.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Oh, I see. I was looking for my cousins. So I see one of my cousins, Rose Allen Wiggins. And so I know Rose probably didn't want me to call her out, but I am. So Rose is actually one of the first, she's my fourth cousin, but all of my fourth cousins are my first cousins because we're all the same age. My mother had me when she was almost 40 years old. And so Rose was the one who, if I have a question about Cumberland or Buckingham, I call Rose and I'm like, Rose, and her father is still alive. And he's my cousin, of course, as well. He's one of the older male cousins that we can possibly test. But hi, Rose. She wants.
I'm here. I had to mute myself quickly because, you know, I have a little one running around making a lot of noise. Good morning, everyone. And I was just so excited to be able to jump on and listen to my history. just as Michelle said, our grandmothers are sisters. And so hearing her with the presentation was everything she said applied to me directly. And so that was very, emotional and heartwarming to hear the information this morning.
Yay. Thanks for being here.
Yes, absolutely.
And so with that, I don't know whether I have any other cousins on here. I know I invited some Randolphs. I was able to, Zanetta Randolph Harrison, she was invited as well. And I'm not sure if she came on or not, but she was here. She's up in Northern Virginia area. So thank you all for joining today. If you don't have any more questions, you can go ahead, Larry. I'm done.
Well, thank you again. And it's really great to hear this information. Unfortunately, some of it is kind of tragic as we listen to the movement of people as if they were cattle. But it is important for us to make sure that we get our history out because, like Michelle mentioned, we don't get the credit that we should be getting for all the work that we've done for this country. And so, I hope Michelle's talk inspires people. Definitely inspires me to do more research and to keep at it. And I really just want to thank everyone for spending the time with us this morning. And make sure you keep track of our upcoming events. Check on our website. And as we mentioned, Shelley has a presentation at 1 o'clock. I think it will be well worth your time. So we're gonna let people go off and get themselves ready for that presentation. But once again, thank you, Michelle, for excellent work.
Thank you for having me.
It's really,
and
really
thank you for
very.
making me do it. So somebody asked me, and I was like, "Oh, okay." So yeah, I was humbled and honored to be here today to share my story and of my ancestors. And if it can help anybody else, that's great.
Yeah, well, it definitely makes me want to visit some plantations also. So thank you very much, and everyone have a great day. Hopefully, we'll see you on Shelley Murphy's presentation. Thank you very much.
Bye bye.